Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm 𝘁࿸𝗄𝘆𝗀 and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out, and take action towards the next level of your life. I interview leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week and make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get the episodes as soon as they are released. In today's show, I am delighted to speak with Nicole Laino. Nicole, you are a business and success coach, a startup founder, Reiki master, a wife, mother, and a former corporate girl. You are a self-proclaimed type A hippie, a free spirit who can grow a business and meet a deadline. You are the host of the Limitless Entrepreneur podcast, and with your coaching, you blend the tactical with the mystical, using your rapid manifestation method to teach female entrepreneurs how to unleash their inner badass and build their business and lives of their dreams from the inside out. Nicole, welcome to Personal Development Mastery. I'm really delighted to be speaking with you today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my real pleasure. Nicole, I would like to start, I always start with some elements of my guest's story. And when I was reading about you, there was a point that I found very interesting, and I would like you to take us back to that. It was when you felt like you were in a kind of a dilemma. You had to either choose between following your ambition and your career, and on the other hand, following personal growth and your inner peace. You felt like it was a dichotomy, something that you should either get one or the other. So if you could take us back to that time and share with us a little background, that would be great.
You mean in my corporate job, my decision to leave that and pursue that part of my personal development? I think that's what we're discussing.
Yes, that's what I was reading. You were compelled to like it was a choice that you had to make. Yes.
It most definitely was. So I worked on Wall Street here in America. I worked on Wall Street for 6 years. I had a very promising career there. I was on the upward trajectory to the outside person. I looked like I had it all. I had the highest 6-figure salary. I had bonuses. I had, the fancy title. I worked in a fancy building with very nice people, not what everybody thinks about Wall Street. I met some of the best people of my life there. And I worked there for 6 years. And at one time it was, like I say, I'm a type A hippie. It satisfied the type A part of me. And being there and being in that energy, I learned a lot, but I think I stayed probably about 4 years, 3 to 4 years too long, where I stopped learning. I stopped really growing there. And I just started being trapped in the pattern that I was in, that it was just this perpetual motion of this machine and now this is your life and this is what you do. Mm-hmm. And I remember that feeling, starting as like a little knowing, and then just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until I actually fell into an actual depression. I was clinically depressed. I was diagnosed clinically depressed. I chose not to go with drugs. My psychiatrist offered me prescriptions, and I said, no, I think that I know that this is in me, and I'd rather work through it with full feeling than numb it. I don't want to just fix it. I want to really fix it. And so I went through therapy and I did a lot of soul searching. And there's just this one image that I can remember standing, in front of a floor to ceiling window on West Street in New York City, looking down. And I remember thinking to myself, I felt this feeling in the pit of my stomach and thinking to myself, look at all the free people down there. And it just really, it hit me. I feel it now. I thought about just how unfree and trapped I felt in this seemingly perfect, privileged world. And I knew I had to change something. And I knew what I felt like I wanted to do sounded crazy, but it was what felt right. And what I knew was that what sounded like a sane, perfectly wonderful path to everybody else, what sounded not crazy to everybody else felt awful in my body. And like to the point of my body, my psyche kicking it out through my body to the point where I did not want to get out of bed in the morning. So I sat with that realization where I said, well, if what I think and what feels right sounds crazy to the world, but what feels awful and makes me want to, I did not have suicidal thoughts, but it did feel like death. It did feel like, I don't want to go on. And but that seems right to everybody else. Maybe everybody else is wrong. Maybe I listen to me and what feels right in me. And so I continued through therapy. I kind of did the soul searching. I did a lot of digging, and, God bless my husband. I came to him and I said, I am really unhappy. And this job is not working and this career isn't working. And the only time that I can remember in the past that I felt happy that I want to go back to is when I was acting. That was kind of my passion when I was younger. And I took the corporate job because I ran out of money. I was broke. I didn't take it because I loved it. And I was good at it and I was broke. So it fit that time. And I said, I think I want to move to Los Angeles and become an actor again. And I'm like, I don't know where that leads. I don't even know what that means, but I just need to do something that feels right, where I can find myself again. I can't feel anything anymore. And bless his heart, he was like, okay. And he's like, I could get out of New York too, and we'll figure it out and we'll see what happens when we get out there. And I believe that maybe you do need to find your creativity again. So let's go out there and see what happens. And that's really what the plan was. There was nothing more than that. It was like, we didn't know where we were going to live. We didn't know what we were going to do. He has a remote job, so that worked out. It's portable. But so we knew we had that stability, but, bless him that he was just like, yeah, I agree. That's the best thing for us to do. So making that choice, it was definitely a hard choice, but it was only hard because in the context of thinking about what everybody else would think. I remember telling my boss how I was leaving and what I was going to do, and the look on his face. And I said, I am completely aware of how insane this sounds to somebody like you, and I'm okay with that. So that was the big realization, was listening to myself and listening to my gut and my heart over what society, family, anybody else had to think.
And what a big realization that is, which I think it comes to most people, if not all people. However, some of them choose not to listen to it, but it comes to them. It's when we realize that we are called. I'm trying to choose my words carefully. We're like called to do something, and we realize when we step into that kind of action that we feel that fulfillment. It's not that it was something you said in the story. It made me cringe when you looked outside of the building and you said these people are free. So that's terrible, and I can relate because I have been in a similar situation, and I think many people have said that. But then it takes a whole different mindset, if you want, or a set of reasons to actually step out of it. I believe everyone must if they feel like that, and not ignore their instincts, but not everyone does it. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I know not everybody does it. I know because also people listen to my podcast, people, come into my world and they'll ask me how I left, and they'll ask me, or they'll come to me and say, that story or that piece resonated with me so much. I feel like that now, and I don't know what to do. And I mean, the answer, I think a lot of people are waiting for, and then I'll do this, like that there has to be the thing, you have to know where you're going. And that's not really how it works, because what happens is, so I was thinking the same word that you were when you said called. That's exactly what it is. And the call starts as a whisper. The call starts as like, this doesn't feel right. And you don't listen to it and you push it away and you're just like, what was that? I don't know. Did someone say something? And then you say, no, I must have imagined that. And then the call gets louder and louder and louder. And then finally it's screaming in your face and terrifying you to the point where you can't move anymore. And you have a choice when you start to listen to it and start acting in accordance with it. or do you let it get to the point where it tears your house down? And that's a choice. So I know that a lot of people wait, and I know that a lot of people wait until sometimes it's too late or it feels too late. And you really just have to, and that's where getting some help, talking to somebody, voicing it when it lives inside of you, or even just journaling it, seeing it on a piece of paper can make it seem so much less scary, and like it makes a whole lot more sense. It just, you lay it out in front of you. When you see it, you can process it in a different way than when it's swirling around in your head and it feels like fantasy in your mind, or it feels like the rantings of like, some side of you that's doesn't have your best interests at heart. When you look at it on a page, it has a very, very different effect. So I always tell people to write it out at the very least, if you can't talk to somebody. And then sometimes, talking, making sure you're talking to the right person that's not going to project their own stuff onto you.
Of course. I'm very big proponent of writing as well, putting ink on paper. It's call me old-fashioned, but I think it has tremendous power that the electronic ways of writing don't have in such a way. Nicole, I wanted to ask you, in your journey of personal development, your own personal development journey and evolution, is there a moment that maybe stands out for you, something that really shifted your way of thinking 180 or something like that?
There have been a lot of moments, but I would say most recently, like within the last year, realizing, so there's a lot of talk about limiting beliefs, and, we have limiting beliefs that hold us back. And while that is 100% true, I became really obsessed with limiting beliefs and a few years ago, and working through them, journaling, doing all the things that everybody does with limiting beliefs. And I couldn't really overcome some of them. Some of them are easy. And then some of them, you're doing affirmations, you're trying to turn them around. Like that's kind of, I think the misconception is that you just need to flip it around. And the truth is that and what my realization over the last year was that it's not the belief, it's the emotion that's tied to the belief. And if you can dig out and you can make peace with that emotion, then you can change the belief. The belief is attached to nothing then. You've exposed it. You've made peace with the part that's gluing it to you. And once you do that, you can truly be free of it. So, and that's the other thing is that, I say make peace with it. The other realization, I'll give you two here. I know you asked for one, but two.
It's okay.
One thing that I say with my people all the time is that, because I work with a lot of people like me, a lot of type A overachievers. And the goal is not perfection. The goal is not to get it right. The goal is to be whole. And when you start looking at your life and looking at your world around, accepting all the anger you have, accepting all of the sadness you have, that frees you to experience greater joy, greater pleasure, all of that. If you stifle that, you stifle the other side as well. If you stifle the bad, you stifle the good. So if you're finding that you can't find your joy, or you can't find your groove, or you're attached to something that is negative, or, quote unquote negative, you haven't made peace with that negative emotion. And once you do, you will find like that's when everything opens up. And that's where you don't feel like you're walking through quicksand anymore. If things feel hard, they no longer feel hard when you start making peace with that, because there's not a piece of you that's held in the back, dragging you back, saying, you forgot me back here. I'm not letting you go that much further down the path without me. You're going to have to come deal with me, and I kind of personify them because I think that it helps make it make sense.
It certainly does. It makes sense. I brought to mind someone actually walking and carrying something, or having left something behind.
Baggage.
Baggage, indeed it is. And how many people suffer with that unnecessarily. Nicole, I wanted to ask you, I was very fascinated about that self-proclaimed type A hippie. So Can you explain that to me?
Sure. I believe in strategies. I believe in having a process. Everything that I do has process behind it. I'm looking at, how do we get from point A to point B? How can we do that in the most fast and efficient, effective way possible? And I'm always looking at things to say, how can we do this better? How can we do this better? How can we do this better? I do that with my work. I do that kind of just in my life. The type A part, I have tons of energy, and I will go at something with full force. I am also, though, because, and I talk about being a type A hippie because I believe that both of those sides of me belong and make me who I am, and make me like, that is my genius, is the fact that I do these two things. And for the longest time, when I worked in corporate, I was like, I don't talk about the hippie creative side of me because that doesn't belong here. And I disowned that part of me. And then when I went back to acting and I moved out to LA, I was like, I'm not even going to tell anybody that I worked on Wall Street because that's going to be like just not accepted here. And I was operating not from a place of being whole. Like I said, I wasn't being whole. I was saying this part of me doesn't belong. This part of me doesn't belong. And I never got anywhere that way. That was part of the problem. They both have to be there. So I have this organized, methodical, strategic, process-oriented side of me that helps me be a great goal-oriented coach. And then I have this other side of me that allows me to dive into all of, like I say, the squishy stuff, the creative side of things, helping you find and getting creative ways of helping people discover and embrace all the parts of themselves that are going to help them do all the strategic stuff. Everything is going to get easier when you start accepting this other side. So I believe that those two pieces marry into what is my zone of genius. It's not that one or the other, it's both of them together.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. There is still though, because when I hear the word hippie, and I suppose other people would agree with me, yes, we're talking about someone who is creative and free spirit and maybe controversial, but also that for me, hippie has a strong element of a spiritual element inside. And I read, you said that to be truly successful in business, you have to be both strategic and spiritual. And personally, I agree with you very much on this. But I wanted you to explain this to me. How does tactics merge with the mystical, as you say? Because on the surface, they seem to be completely opposite things, don't they? On the surface.
They do on the surface, don't they? But everything that you want to do is tied to your ability to do it. Mm-hmm. And so you can have, and there are all of these people, and I'm sure some of the people listening to your show right now, there's someone listening to your show right now that is going to be this person that I'm talking about. You've bought 100 courses. You've promised yourself you would do 100 projects, different things. And for some reason, you get maybe a third of the way through, maybe you get one video in, and then you drop it. And the shiny object syndrome, or, the inability to complete your projects, to reach your goals, to make it to where you want to go. That's where the spiritual side comes in. Because we all think that we need the strategy, we need the Instagram hack, we need the process, and people come to me for that too. But I know, and it's why I do a group program where I am coaching people through our process, because I can't just give it to you on your own. The blind spots are too great. And if you look at it so there's a personal development side of it too, but then you can expand that into how personal development is connection to the universe. Or whatever it is that you call it, however you relate to it. I'll call it the universe because it's just non-denominational. And this concept that the universe is always saying yes to you. You say, I want $1 million. The universe says, yep, sure, here you go. And so you are at, and I'm using my hands right now, we're on audio, but if you are at a point A, and the universe says like, okay, point A is here, you want to be here, but you are yards back at point B. And that gap between you and where you want to be is all the work you have to do in order to be able to achieve this. The universe is always saying yes. So what we're doing is it's saying, but you can't see it until you get rid of that baggage, until you, and another analogy that I use sometimes is that, like, if you wanted to get into a party and there's a bouncer outside the door and there's the velvet rope and you're saying, I belong in that party. My friends are in there. Trust me. Here are my credentials. Here's how awesome I am. Trust me. Look, I'm in my best dress. I belong in that party. And he's like, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I know you do. I saw you with your friends. I totally know that you belong in this party. But ma'am, you have these bags here that can't go in with you. And when you start paying attention, the way you know what those bags are is the universe is bringing you signs. It's bringing you little triggers in the form of your triggers. So the things that make you mad is the anger that you need to work on. The things that make you frustrated is the frustration and digging into exactly what's making you frustrated. And that's what I work with people on. Once we start digging through that stuff, the strategy starts to fall into place. But the spiritual side of it is recognizing that you are in control of all of it, that you have this divine connection to something that encompasses us all. And when you start playing with that energy and you start looking at every single thing that happens to you as a gift and a lesson, you will see the next step in your path. And not only will you see it, you'll realize it was there all along. You just couldn't see it. I always say that you're on the path that's paved for you. It's right in front of you, but there's stuff in the way of you seeing the fact that your feet are on it already. You've just got to remove that stuff. It's not adding things. It's not adding more strategy or more courses or more knowledge most of the time. Sometimes there's an element of that, but more often it's subtraction. It's taking away all of the junk that's laying in the way of you seeing how powerful you are and how capable you are of achieving everything that you want. So that's the spiritual side.
You said it wonderfully. I really enjoyed your explanation and about the subtraction of removing those pieces that are not our true self in order to uncover shall we say, the diamond that is under the pile of mud.
Absolutely.
Have you always been drawn to the spiritual side of things, Nicole?
I have. I don't think that I always listened to that in the way that I've devoted myself over the last 7 years, but that really came when I moved out to Los Angeles and I discovered meditation. And that was kind of where I dove really into it. And I saw how much it opened me up. And I was like, this is what I have been looking for. I'm going to continue down this path. I think that I had I had connection to something bigger than me my whole life. I felt that. I felt held. I felt very taken care of. I've never been a very fearful person. And I was a great manifester in my younger years where just things came to me. And I remember it was just, I cultivated this feeling of just feeling good. And I knew that everything would always be taken care of. And my life didn't necessarily line up with that. It wasn't that I had this wonderful, overly privileged background or anything. I just felt like I felt like I was meant for more and that somehow the path would be revealed to me. That came very easily. And in kind of like a young person's way, I think you trust a little bit more. And then I lost a lot of that, truthfully, when I went into that corporate world and I got more linear and I lost a little bit of it. And then, and I look at it like my depression was a great gift from the universe. The universe was saying, this is not where you belong. You need to come back to us. And it put a nasty thing in my way that I couldn't ignore. Mm-hmm. And it caused me to make a turn. And I would never do it another way. I think that it's exactly the path I was supposed to take.
Mm-hmm. Certainly like that. I believe that the universe is initially speaks to us in whispers, but if we keep ignoring it, the voice gets louder and louder, and eventually it turns into a scream that you can't ignore anymore, like an illness or an accident,
Exactly.
usually something that turns your life around.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier that you were always a great manifestor. So tell me a bit about that. How do you define being a great manifestor?
I define it as thinking about something and it just happens.
Okay.
And so when I was younger, I'll use this example. So when I was younger, I was very into music. I went to concerts all the time. That was my pastime. I bought, like, all of my money went to concert tickets. And I took my sister to a concert, and I bought these, it was her graduation gift. And I bought her these tickets. We got like third row or something, way down on the floor. It was a big splurge by me, but I was like, let's just do this because this is going to be fun. And I was thinking, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I wish that there was a way for me to do this where I didn't have to pay for it all the time. I didn't have to, it'd be great if you could just have this experience all the time, and it didn't break your bank. And at that show, someone comes over to us and to me and hands me his card and said, we want you to come back tomorrow for the next show. And I was like, oh, all right. And I look at the card and I recognize the man's name. And then we went to that show, and he and I ended up becoming friends. And then that kind of blew up into this world where I met all of these people in the industry. I didn't pay for a concert ticket for the next like 7 years or something like that. I was in all of these places where it just happened. It just started to unfold and happen for me that way. Jobs kind of came in that world. And it was a very strange thing where I trusted it would happen, and it did. And when I ran out of something, or I thought that it wasn't going to happen, when I let go, then the right thing came. So that's sort of how I define it, that it was just unfolded before me without me having to do anything. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't do anything. I made one choice, and then all the rest of them came from that. So that's just an example.
Sure. Do you think it's more a matter of having a unique gift, or is it a technique that you think it makes you, or something that you do or think, or is it just something that you have and that's it?
I don't think it's something that you have and that's it. I think that it absolutely can be taught, because I think we all have the power to do it. I know we all have the power to do it. I think it's and what I have found is that it's more about that subtraction. It's so if you thought about it like you were a tower emitting a frequency, and then, what happens with our cell phones and stuff, when there's weather, when the pole gets knocked down, when something falls on top of it, the signal gets broken or there's interference with it. It's removing that interference. And the interference is your negative emotions that are telling you that you can't have what it is that you want. So it's not about think and grow rich. It's about think, believe, and grow rich. Your ability to believe in the thing that you want and trust fully that it's going to happen. It's a lot harder than it seems for most of us, because we've gotten very stuck in reality. And like one of the little mantras that I give myself whenever I feel like I'm attached to an outcome. So I'll use the example of when I'm in a launch, and I want the launch. We want the launch to be big. We want it to be profitable, of course. And it's hard to not get caught up in the goal and to just live in the moment. And that's the secret to manifesting and to creating great outcomes, is to not care about the outcome. But how do we do that? And I say to myself every single day during the launch, probably 100 times a day, I will either get the result that I want or the lesson that I need. And to let that set you at ease so that you can continue taking inspired action and not getting in your own way. Because that's usually what happens. We want to create these big changes, that requires us to do things that are outside of our comfort zone. And the trust is trusting that if you move forward in faith, the better thing will come for you. And if it doesn't mean that it never will. It means that this is just the next lesson for you in getting what you want. If you can move through life with that, you can manifest anything that you want. We stop ourselves. We get disappointed with the outcome and we say, this doesn't work. I don't think I can do this anymore. And we curl in a hole where we stop acting in faith. And that's what stifles the manifestation. So that is about like, and when we talk about being high vibe, the high vibe is just being able to be positively moving through and enjoying the process and not judging it the entire time. That's sort of how I see it. And I think one of the things like, and if anybody takes anything away from this, if you're thinking about manifesting, think about like, well, what's the next thing I have to do to what's the inspired action that aligns with this vision that I have for myself? And when you go to take that action, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel icky? Does it make you feel like you want to be sick? Does it make you feel like, what is that feeling? And really sit in it and experience that feeling. When you recognize that we are just humans, that we are souls having a human experience, and that every experience, even failure and pain, has its purpose here, then you can have a very different relationship with failure, with pain, with everything that's happening around you. And then you can say something like, I will either get the result that I want or the lesson that I need, and you mean it. And then you can do the things that are really, really hard for you because you know that you will either get the result that you want or the lesson that you need. You never lose.
True. And if only more people would see it like that, would see what we term as quote unquote failure as a lesson, or maybe if you want, as a nudge to point your actions or your efforts in a different direction, or even slightly a different direction. That doesn't have to be massive. So it's very important to realize that for sure. And you answered also, I was about to ask you, because talking about manifestation, most people, if you ask them what would you like to manifest, they would probably say the same thing, with more money. So you already answered for me the question. I wanted your thoughts on why don't people manifest money, but I liked you said about the interference that comes from the negative, the limiting beliefs that hold the person back. I suppose they don't feel deserving of the money.
Exactly. And one of my clients came to me this week, and most people think that, of course I want more money. Like, how could I have a bad relationship with money? There's a relationship with money, and then there's your attitude toward money. And again, I like to personify things because I think it helps us kind of get out of our heads about it and see things from a different perspective. And if you looked at the way that, I have my clients write a letter to money saying how it's treated you. How do you feel about your relationship with money? And I also tell the women that I work with that tell me about your relationship with men, because it's a masculine type of energy that money is. And if you feel like men have wronged you, if you feel like, is it parallel? And what's usually very interesting is that their relationships with men, or their viewpoint, often aligns very closely with their thoughts, relationship, and feelings about money. But money, one of my clients came to me about a week ago and she said, oh my God, I just realized that and she really shrugged off the whole money belief thing. It always takes her a very long time to kind of come around to embracing these. And once she does, she dives fully in, but she'll just be like, no, I don't have any negative beliefs about that. Like, I'm fine. I'm comfortable. And I'm like, okay, come to me when you're ready to talk about this. I challenge it, but if she pushes back, it's like, okay, well, let's come back to this. Let's come back around. But she said, I realized that I have this belief of I should be grateful for what I have. I have a good life, and wanting any more is greedy. And if you have more money, then more problems come. And I was like, well, these are very sinister beliefs. They're going to hold you back from actually creating and enjoying more money, because you believe at your core that, to the point of that you didn't know you believed it, that came as a realization after months of us talking about this and you kind of telling me that you have no problems with money. It came out that you believe more money, more problems. That will keep you from, that's going to keep you at that thermostatic level of earning a certain amount of money. If it's like, I earn $120,000 a year. And then when you earn 140, something in you is going to bring that back down to where it, quote unquote, belongs. The safe zone of, this is where we live with, our life doesn't fall apart if we earn this much. Let's just keep it right here. And if you think about things like, some people will say things like, well, if I earn more, then I'm just going to have to pay more in taxes. If I earn more, then I'm just going to have to hire people. And if you're making those calculations where you feel like earning more keeps you flat, that is a money belief that needs to be worked through. And again, it's the emotions that are tied to that. It's the emotions underneath it. And sometimes it's, you can be really angry about money. You can feel like money has not supported you, and really digging into that work. So again, that's like where the spiritual side comes into it, because it's about doing the things, but you're going to plateau. And that's where the spiritual side really has to kick in.
Thank you. Fantastic. Nicole, where does Reiki fit in all of this, if it does at all? I mean, is it related with the other things that you do, or is it just something that you enjoy?
It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I use. It was kind of that was my first, after meditation, that was the next step I took into the energetic world. And it was the first thing that was like, another thing that was really impactful for a way that I could feel this connection to this bigger thing. That was what was so powerful for me about it. Was meditation was expanding my mind and calming my mind and making that mind-body connection. Reiki really opened me up to the energetics and to be able to feel what energy feels like, and that it literally is all around us, and recognizing that your energy is connecting to everyone else's energy, and that we all have this connection to it. We all have this power to access it. And if you want to, that gave me this, I started to feel less tired. I started to, I felt it more. While I do Reiki sessions and things like that, it's not something that I like advertise necessarily so much as something that I do. It's more something that I'm trained in.
Thank you. Tell me also about your podcast. So you are a fellow podcast host. So tell me, first of all, who is your podcast for? Who should listen to it?
My podcast is so it's called the Limitless Entrepreneur podcast. And so it's for entrepreneurs who are, they're either dipping their toe into the spiritual water. They've plateaued where they're trying to figure out, how can I get to more? I know I'm more, but I can't really access the more that I know that I am. I can't live out my full potential. So I tend to, it tends to be geared toward, definitely a little bit geared toward women, but not a feminine podcast by name. It's just, my listeners tend to be female, and it's female entrepreneurs, mainly who are mothers, who are trying to juggle this all life and a business, and trying to find yourself and your courage in the midst of all of that. So I have some overachievers who, we tend to attract what we are. So I get a lot of overachievers, a lot of people that are doers, and they're trying to figure out how to create more space so that they can create more in their life without necessarily more doing. So that, and what we talk about on the show is a lot of this. I give the strategic side with the mystical side. I blend the tactical with the mystical. I want to give you all the tools that you need. So when I tell you to go take inspired action, that you know what action to take, that you have the tools to do that. But I really want to open you up to showing you that it's more than just the tactical stuff day in and day out, that you have to be doing this expansive work to truly expand your life.
And that this was something that really intrigued me when I was preparing for this conversation. This this blending of two seemingly opposite worlds. I know for me they're not opposite at all, but many people still see it like that, and I think it's about time to realize that being spiritual has nothing to do with whether you go to the church or anything like that, because there's too many people. There are misconceptions of what spiritual is, and whether it applies to business, money, and anything else. And it certainly applies very much, because you said you used the word whole, being whole. So being whole means being successful in a business, if that's what your soul demands of you. So yeah, spiritual doesn't mean living in poverty. Yes, there are some misconceptions to some people. Yeah.
And that's a limiting belief that a lot of people have, is that in order to be spiritual, you can't make money.
Yes.
That is another big money belief that people have. So yes, absolutely. And I think the other thing that, like, with the strategic side, with the mystical, I like to also say that I think I explain things in ways that people understand. I make it feel a little less like, you don't have to be sitting in a drum circle in Bali with, gongs and, like that's, it can be a far more practical application to all of this and understanding of it, that it doesn't have to be so woo.
I like the way you described it. Indeed it is. Nicole, I would like to also ask you some quick fire questions to start wrapping this conversation up. So I always start with my first question: what does personal development mean to you?
It means recognizing that you have infinite potential and marching forward, just knowing that every day you can be a better version of yourself. That's what personal development means to me.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And if you could go back in time and meet the 18-year-old Nicole, what's the one piece of advice you would give her?
I would tell her to follow her heart. That every wrong turn, or seemingly wrong turn, that I made came from me doing what I thought was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And once I found my path, it was like, oh, I just went back to when I was like 22, and then I made the decision that took me off this path. And so I would say, listen to your heart. She's smarter.
And let's say you could wave a magic wand and you could change something in the world as it is today. What would that be?
Right now, I think I would love to wave a magic wand and have everybody have a little bit more compassion for each other, mm-hmm. and see each other as not so different, and not seeing the divide, and seeing actually what unifies us, which is we're all the same.
Thank you. Emerging from the conversation we had, if you had to give to the listener one actionable item, we already mentioned a few, but please pick an actionable item that the listener can implement right now or tomorrow morning and make a difference.
Sure. So I know that a lot of people, you get stuck on what to do next. Yeah. What's the next right thing? And because there are so many different things that are out there, no matter what you're talking about, whether it's parenting styles or what to cook for dinner or which diet to choose or, which entrepreneurial path to take, which launch method, all of that stuff. There's all these things, they all work for somebody, and figuring out what's right for you. What I'd say for actionable is to really take some time to envision where you want to be. Pick a time period, a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever you feel comfortable with, and really envision what that looks like. Beyond just goals can be a little bit too just there's no feeling in them a lot of times, just a line item. So I want to make $100,000. I want to make $500,000, and then you look at that goal and it invokes no feeling. But when you envision something and you say, well, if I made $500,000, what would that do for me? What would that feel like? And you'd say, well, what would I do with it? Well, I would rent a house with all of my best friends and nobody would have to pay for it. I would pay for it. And we'd all get together and I can feel myself hugging them. I can see us with our kids running around and feel where that takes you. And recognize that having a vision like that will pull you toward it. Whereas having a goal can be very easy to ditch because there is no feeling or it doesn't feel real to you. And pay attention. If you have a vision like that and you're like, that could never be me, then recognize that is the goal. That is the limiting belief you have to work on and the emotion that is connecting you to it. So that feeling of being afraid, that feeling of being helpless, the feelings that are underneath that's what's holding you back from having that vision. You wouldn't have that vision if it wasn't meant for you. So recognize that and recognize that the only lie in there is the feelings, the beliefs and emotions that are tied to it. So once you dispel those lies, you can create that future. So make a vision for yourself.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. And where would you direct people who want to find out more about you and what you do?
So I would ask them to follow me on Instagram. I'm at Nicole Laino, NICLAINO. I'd also direct you to my website where we have some free resources for you there. NicoleLaino.me is my website. So you can reach me there, and please feel free to connect with me on Instagram. Send me a DM. I am always around, and I love to hear from people. Like I love to hear what a big takeaway was for you from this episode.
Awesome. Nicole, is there anything you were hoping we would discuss about today and we completely missed it?
No, I mean, we really covered a lot, I thought. I love talking about this stuff. I feel like we covered a lot of space. I do love talking about this stuff.
That's brilliant. I love listening about this stuff. So that's a good combination.
I go on podcasts so that I don't have to, my husband and my friends who are not interested in this don't have to listen to me talk about it anymore. I found audiences. I love going on shows like this where we can have these conversations. Thank you for having me.
It's my real pleasure. Nicole, I want to thank you very much for a really fascinating, enjoyable, and I believe very valuable conversation that I had with you. I want to wish you all the very best in your life and your business. Any last parting words?
Well, and to you as well, I just want to thank you so much and thank everybody. If you're still listening to this, thank you so much for staying to the end. And thank you for being here and sharing in this conversation. I appreciate you just opening your show up to me and allowing me to come on here. I had so much fun in this, but I'm truly, truly grateful for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and rate it on Apple Podcasts. And also share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to find out more about what I do and gain access to exclusive content, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. The link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.